Hello, my name is Corliss Jackson, and I am going to share with you today my signature session, which is called Cracking the Code to Your Federal Job Search. My company's name is Federal Job Results, and just to give you a little bit of background about me, I started my company about 10 years ago, and I had worked for the government for almost 10 years. I was with the Department of Health and Human Services and with the Office of Personnel Management. And at OPM, Office of Personnel Management, I was a GS-15 program manager doing some really unique work around staffing and recruiting individuals into the federal government. And I left my federal position there, and several people approached me and said, you know what, Corliss, I'd love to work for the federal government. I've got skill, I've got talent, I've got what it takes to make a great public servant, but I can't figure out how to navigate through that hiring process. It doesn't make sense. I don't know what I'm doing right. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm not getting any feedback. So I'm wondering if you can help me prepare a package. And fast forward through to today, and there are now 6 of us here at Federal Job Results, and what we do is help individuals around the world and also work with organizations who are helping individuals really navigate through that awful, horrible, horrendous federal hiring process and really help break down the barriers and help you understand exactly what it is that the HR folks are looking for. Because there's a very specific formula, and if you understand what that formula is, it can help you prepare a better application package. So what we'll do today is talk about what I call the Federal Job Roadmap. We're going to talk about the puzzle, which are the federal regulations around hiring, and then we'll talk about the federal versus private sector resume and how you can best leverage your information in a federal resume for use on the USAJOBS.gov website. All right, so the Federal Job Roadmap consists of the following steps. You will probably apply using some online system like USAJOBS, and the HR folks will rate and rank your applications. They are primarily looking for 3 main things. First thing is how you respond to what we call the self-assessment questionnaire. This is where you're asked multiple questions about your knowledge, skill, and ability in certain aspects of the job. The HR folks are actually using a computerized system, an information technology, IT system, to either screen you in or out of the process. So it's a filter. And as applicants, you need to make sure you're answering at the highest possible level. Generally, it's something like, I'm an expert, I train others, I know everything about this particular process. You have to strive to answer that way. Otherwise, the computer system will screen you out and nobody will actually see your application. No human being will actually see your application. The second phase of the process is that an HR person is screening your resume with human being eyeballs. They are screening your resume for keywords. So there's no right or wrong number of keywords. You just have to have enough of what they want to see to move you forward. And the next part of the process is a human being actually reading your resume. Now, once the HR hiring staff has read your resume, they will decide if you are on the bottom tier, the middle tier, or the top tier. Okay? Bottom tier is not qualified. Middle tier is mediocre, and it doesn't really get you anywhere. The third tier is where we ultimately want to be, that top tier. It's called the qualified and referred, or best qualified tier. And once you have met the requirements and you're in that top tier, the HR staff will move you forward to be reviewed by the program area. This is where the hiring manager usually will take part in the process. That hiring manager will usually receive somewhere between 10 and 30 applications, and those applications will be reviewed to see if that hiring manager wants to make any hiring decisions. And usually what that will entail is that the hiring manager will convene, along with human resources, a panel of decision makers who will interview somewhere between 5 and 15 candidates. So it's a very competitive process, and you want to make sure you're completely ready for that federal interview. At Federal Job Results, we will do interview coaching for you to make sure that you're completely prepared and ready for that panel interview. Sometimes you will have first a phone interview and then a face-to-face interview. Sometimes you'll have a face-to-face interview followed by maybe 1 or 2 other face-to-face interviews. It all depends on the agency and how they want to go through that process. It's totally up to them. After you've aced that interview and they decide they love you and they have to have you on staff, you will generally be passed back to the Human Resources Office, and that HR staff, that hiring team, will now give you a tentative job offer. Tentative meaning that you have to go through the background investigation process before they will make that job offer a permanent one. At this point in time, you can negotiate both your salary and your vacation time, and this is the one and only time that you can do that. And there's a process for that, so if you need more information on that, you can contact us. Now, the security process entails a number of different things, but basically you complete some paperwork and an investigator will take you through a process, and an adjudicator will make a determination as to whether or not you are going to be a good candidate for federal employment. Doesn't mean you need to be perfect, doesn't mean you can't have some hiccups in your background, both financially and legally, but it does mean that you have to be moving in the right direction as of today. So if you owe Uncle Sam some back taxes, you better clean up that, clean them up and make sure that you are moving forward on some kind of payment plan, so that when the investigator goes through your affairs, he or she will determine that you're a good candidate for federal employment. All right, so a little bit about the pieces to the puzzle, and very basically the government requires you to be qualified for the positions to which you are applying. This means that you have to have 12 months of experience in the field or doing the work that they are looking for in terms of the jobs you're targeting. 12 months does not need to be consecutive, but it does need to be full-time. So if you have some experience and it adds up to 12 months, you may qualify for a federal position. Now, the alternative for having this direct work experience is for you to have something that we call transferable skills. These are skills that you've gained in some environment. Usually it's work, but it could be training, could be education or schooling, it could be YouTube for that matter. It really doesn't matter where you've gained the skills, but you've used them for at least 12 months. And again, the 12 months does not need to be consecutive. Let me give you an example of how transferable skills can help you. I was working with a jewelry store manager who was working at one of our local malls here in the DC area, and she wanted a job in the federal government. And we looked at her skills, and the government really isn't hiring jewelry store managers, but the government is hiring people with a certain type of skill set. So if we look at her skills in terms of managing people, human resources, managing money, finance and budgeting, dealing with contracts, vendor management and dealing with contracting and purchasing, dealing with customers, communicating with customers, dealing with operational components, security, though all those things are skills that she can leverage and use in her next career. She's now working for one of the intelligence agencies doing analytical work. So we took her jewelry store background and aligned it with skills that are required for a job in the federal government. So using transferable skills can help you tremendously. It's important that you figure out what your target is so that you can figure out which transferable skills will most closely align with your targeted job. And then you can build your resume from what you're targeting. Okay? Second thing I want to talk about here involves knowledge, skill, and ability statements. Some of you may have heard of KSAs in the past. KSAs are short statements or phrases that the government gives us that they want us as applicants to prove that we have. Probably the most common KSA statement that you've heard of is ability to communicate, or ability to communicate orally and in writing. This is a statement that the government wants you to prove that you have. And the way that they want you to do this is to make sure that this information is woven and included in your resume. So in the federal resume that you submit for employment, you need to make sure that every one of these KSAs that you see on the vacancy announcement are somehow woven in to your federal resume. Very important component of your application. Now, one of the things that I want to just share with you is something called series and grade. This is a very important component to your job search. Every job in the government has a four-digit series number. In this particular case, it's 2210-12. 12 is the grade, that's the salary level. The 2210 is the series number. Now, why is this important? The first two digits of every job series number tells you what overarching, what I'll call umbrella occupational group the job series belongs to. Okay, so think about this. There are 23 overarching occupational groups across the federal government, and every one of those occupational groups has a set of job series numbers underneath it. So think of this as the last name of a family, so family last name, Smith, Jones, Jackson, whatever. And underneath each family name, there are a series of family members, okay? Now, you may wonder, why isn't? This is a list of the 23 occupational groups, okay? Doesn't change. This is the same list every federal agency uses. Now, if you have managed or supported in any capacity a program, project, or process, you will find yourself in the 0300 occupational group. It's called General Administrative, Clerical, and Office Services Group. Don't worry about the name. This is where you will find everything from program manager, project manager, special assistant, administrative officer, executive officer, office manager, secretary, administrative assistant, mail clerk, all the way across the board. Any support or management of a program, project, or process will be found in the 0300 group. A lot of people will fall into that occupational group, and there are a ton of jobs out there that you can find in USAJOBS under this category. Now, if you have subject matter expertise or you went to school for a certain type of work, you may find that a separate occupational group is a good fit for you. So for me, human resources in the 0200 group is going to be a good fit for me. But because I was a program manager, I'm also going to fall into the 0300 group. You may find that you fall into 2, maybe 3 of these occupational groups. Most people will be qualified for 2 or 3 of these occupational groups. Now, why am I sharing this information with you? Because it's very simple for you to search in USAJOBS under the occupational group that you belong to. Remember, 12 months worth of direct or transferable skills is what they're looking for. So if you want to be in IT, Information Technology Group, number 2200, but you don't have 12 months of experience leading up to IT type work, you are not going to qualify. So you do not need to apply to those jobs. So knowing what occupational group you fall into will really help to limit the number of, or the scope of what you're looking for in terms of federal employment, because you will not qualify for all 23 groups. You're probably going to qualify for 2, maybe up to 3 of these occupational groups. Some of you may only qualify for 1. So this is really going to help narrow down your target. Now remember, I said earlier, if you can identify what your target is, it's a lot easier for you to identify what types of transferable skills you might need to document on your resume to show that you are qualified for the jobs you're targeting. So it's really important to identify up front what type of work you might be targeting, and then build your federal resume to support what you are targeting. Now, this is a certain section of the vacancy announcement. I just want to point out something that's pretty important here. As you review the duties of any vacancy announcement, we are looking for about an 80% match between the duties that are listed and your work experience. So what you bring to the table and what they're asking for, there needs to be about a 75-80% overlap between the two. And keep in mind that whatever's listed at the top of this series of information is going to be most important to the HR person, and it's going to be more heavily weighted than the other items at the bottom of the list here. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between a federal and a private sector resume. Private sector resume is what most of us are very familiar with. It generally is about 1 to 2 pages long, pretty short, and the focus primarily is on results and accomplishments. So whatever it is you're doing, whatever it is you're counting, that's what's important. So how many dollars, contracts, widgets, whatever it is you're doing, that's what's important, and that's what we document. Now, on the federal side, everything is a little bit different. The length of a federal resume is usually between 4 and 5 pages long. Typical average is 5 pages. And yes, the HR folks will read all those pages because they actually have to give you a score. And the score determines what grade level you will qualify for. Okay? So the grade levels go from 1 to 15, and they need to determine where on that grade scale you will fall. All right, so they're actually going to give you a score. Now, the main difference between a private sector resume and a federal resume is the focus of the resume. What do I mean by that? The focus of a federal resume, according to the HR hiring team, should be on the process you engaged in when you were working, the skills that you used, or how you performed your work. The accomplishments and results are a very good thing to include for the hiring manager, but the first stop along the way is in human resources, and the HR folks need to know what is it you did and how you did it in order to give you credit or give you points. Very important to them. Now, you get one shot, one document, one resume that's going through the process. So it's extremely important that your resume be a marriage between what the HR people are looking for, which is the process you engaged in, and what the hiring manager is looking for, which is the result. And your resume needs to be a marriage of both of these components. Okay? Many of you have taken a corporate or private sector resume and submitted it for a federal job, and you get an email back that says you're not qualified, and you're scratching your head thinking, I wonder how this is true, given that I've been in this field for the last 10 years. It's generally not that you're not qualified. It's that you haven't given the federal human resources staff enough information for them to sink their teeth into your skills. And those skills are going to be what gives you the credit. So you're really shooting yourself in the foot because you're selling yourself short and you're not giving them a complete picture of what you bring to the table. Okay, so a lengthy federal resume, again, 5 pages on average, is extremely important in the federal hiring process. Now, a couple things about the federal resume that I just want to share with you. You definitely should do a chronological format, which means you go backwards from today and you list all of your positions. The federal government only requires you to list any position that is relevant to the work that you are targeting. So if there's some things you want to leave out, that's fine. They do not care about gaps in employment, although you can decide that you may decide that you want to put in some training or volunteer work to kind of cover up those gaps. You definitely need to give significant details. Remember, I said about 5 pages on average is what a federal resume is comprised of, and those details are necessary for the HR hiring team. The accomplishments, very important for the hiring manager, because as an employee, your job is to make your supervisor look good. and the hiring manager needs to see that you have some results and accomplishments under your belt in order to be interested enough to call you for an interview. And then lastly, we definitely need a 10-year work history. If you don't have that, that's fine. Put what you do have, but you do not need to go back further. If there's some reason that you feel you might need to go back further than 10 years, you can absolutely do that at the bottom of the last year that you have listed. But there really needs to be a compelling reason why you would want to do that. All right, so let's talk about USAJOBS for a moment. USAJOBS really should be the hub to your federal job search, and USAJOBS will actually connect to a number of different systems, and each time you apply to a job, you will experience a new and fresh perspective of how to apply to a federal job, because no two applications are identical. So you will be doing a little bit of exploring. Now, in order to get your resume into the USAJOBS system, my recommendation is that you upload your resume into USAJOBS. There's another way that you can do this. You can actually copy and paste your resume into the online resume builder that USAJOBS provides. Either way works. I like to use the upload function because I think it's easier as you're applying to tailor your resume for certain job announcements, because you want to kind of add some keywords from each announcement. It is, either way works. You can use the resume builder or you can use the upload function. Keep in mind that there are some jobs in some agencies where they will only allow you to use the resume builder that you have built in the USAJOBS resume builder. So they won't let you use your uploaded resume. So just keep that in mind. But again, either way works. I recommend that if you upload your resume into USAJOBS, that you follow very closely the USAJOBS resume builder format, and you replicate that in your Word document of your resume, so that when you upload your resume into USAJOBS, you are following the HR person's format, and they are very familiar with USAJOBS resume builder. So make your resume look like the resume builder resume. Hopefully that makes sense to you. All right, now if you need more information or if you want additional assistance with your federal job search, you can contact us on the web through federaljobresults.com, or you can give us a phone call, 1-844-4FED-JOB. And what we do for you is help you develop a federal job search strategy. So we look at where you are, and we look at what you bring to the table, and we figure out how to position you for success in the eyes of the federal human resources staff. So there's different ways that we can do this. There's different avenues that we might pursue, but we will take a look at where you are and give you an idea of how we might work together and partner. We're very interested in working with folks who are coachable and who are looking for some assistance in their federal job search. Thank you so much, and have a great day.